Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Looking to Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at, is Bitcoin finally decoupling from traditional markets? To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the Bitcoin price live chart, and as we can see, we've had a fairly good month or so in the Bitcoin price action. Obviously, today of all days when I'm filming, we've had a little bit of a price retracement, so not the best timing there. But if we just scroll down, we can see a lot of people are getting a little bit more greedy in the market, and especially because it seems like Bitcoin may be decoupling from traditional markets. So when we say decoupling, all we're referring to is Bitcoin hopefully one day breaking this strong correlation with traditional assets such as the S&P 500 or American equities such as Tesla and Apple. Now, this strong correlation we've seen throughout most of Bitcoin's price history results in Bitcoin moving in price at the same time as traditional assets rising in price and again falling at the same time. So when we say decoupling, we're hoping that one day Bitcoin won't be as tied to the price movement of these assets. And over the past few weeks, we've seen Bitcoin maybe show signs of this happening. We've seen traditional assets move sideways for the most part, while Bitcoin has had a somewhat exponential rise in its price. Now, this potentially is due to some fundamental factors. We actually have a look here. If you weren't already aware, a lot of US banks have actually gone into insolvency, they've closed down, they've gone into administration and are seeking additional funds or buyouts or even bailouts from the government to try and bring user funds back into availability. Now, this is still an ongoing situation, and as you can see here, there may be other banks at risk, but as this is developing, we won't go too much into that. But if we go back to the price live chart here, we can see as this really started becoming a mainstream news event, we saw Bitcoin rally in price. Now, is this the start of a Bitcoin decoupling from traditional assets? Now, if we just go to the TradingView chart here, we can see the Bitcoin price action since the start of the year. And we can see overall it's been very positive to the upside. We can see Bitcoin started the year at around $16,000 or $17,000. And as I film this is in percentage terms right now, but we're at about $26,000, $27,000, maybe even $28,000 as we were earlier today. So this decoupling, if we actually apply the NASDAQ, so this is the top 100 tech stocks in the US stock market, we can see that even though we've had a lot of murmurings and potential of a Bitcoin price decoupling, on the macro scale, so on a longer time frame, this doesn't really seem to be the case. However, if we drop down to the lower time frames, such as the hourly, we can see if we zoom out a little bit here, that a lot of this murmuring of a decoupling really started to occur just about a week ago. So we can see as Bitcoin's price started to increase, we saw this sideways price action or even a price decrease in the NASDAQ and just across most traditional markets. Now, this gave a lot of people the idea that Bitcoin was actually starting this decoupling, especially due to the fact that this was really driven by the fact that many US and global banks are really suffering due to poor management of user funds. And really, this was the basis of why Bitcoin was supposedly created over a decade ago. As banks were seeing government bailouts, this really spurred on the necessity for a decentralized currency like Bitcoin. But if we go back to the price chart here, we can see even though this decoupling event did occur for a few candles here, realistically, it hasn't really sustained into anything too prolonged to really call this a decoupling event. In fact, if we actually look since this decoupling event really potentially started, Bitcoin is actually down about 1.79% as I film this, and the NASDAQ is actually up. So really, this decoupling event hasn't really worked out too well for Bitcoin, considering it's actually underperformed traditional markets. And if we actually load up the gold price here, a lot of people may have hoped that Bitcoin would really fulfill its potential as a digital gold, as we did see this inverse correlation between the price of gold and traditional assets like the NASDAQ. But really, again, this didn't really come into fruition. Bitcoin really lost this correlation to gold and the narrative as a hedge against inflation and poor government policies. But really, not long after that, Bitcoin regained its correlation with equities and more speculative assets. So just to summarize, following a number of traditional market impacts that have negatively impacted global stock prices such as the Nasdaq and the S&P 500, we did briefly see a sharp and uncorrelated increase in the Bitcoin price. And this spurred on a lot of traders and investors to potentially believe that Bitcoin had started its decoupling from traditional assets. And historically, the Bitcoin has had a very strong price correlation with equities and indexes like the S&P 500, but to be honest, we're yet to see any prolonged decoupling of price action. We did briefly see a glimmer of price action decoupling, but really this was fairly unsustained and can't really be classed as a decoupling event. We really need to see this sustained for days, weeks, even months before we could really say Bitcoin was an uncorrelated asset to global equities and more speculative assets. However, one thing we can look towards is that Bitcoin was actually created in the midst of the global financial crisis in 2008, and with more prevalent bank mismanagement, this could be a major bullish catalyst that could maybe spur Bitcoin onto this decoupling and really fulfill its potential as this hedge asset that isn't necessarily tied to economic policies, inflationary rates, and other economic fundamental factors. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private trading view scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below and on social media, what your thoughts are on a potential Bitcoin and cryptocurrency decoupling from traditional markets such as US equities. Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.